There is a particular kind of pain that comes not from failing, but from succeeding completely and still not getting what you came for. Most people have felt a version of it at some point in their lives. You prepare harder than anyone around you. You walk into the room, deliver everything you have, leave nothing behind, and the people watching tell you it was extraordinary. And then someone else gets the thing you came for. That is not a familiar story of losing. That is something more specific and more difficult to sit with. That is what happened to Matty Juniosa on the night of May 30th, 2026, when Britain's Got Talent Series 19 held its live final. And the explanation for what happened that night is not the one that most of the internet reached for in the hours that followed. The immediate reaction was enormous. The word Rob started trending on X within minutes of the result being announced. Posts flooded in simultaneously from the Philippines, from across Southeast Asia, from the United Kingdom, and from the United States. It was not the scattered frustration of a small fan base who had backed the wrong horse. It was a collective cross-continental outpouring from people who had watched the same journey and arrived at the same conclusion, and it dominated the conversation for days. And sitting visibly emotional in the audience as the winning choir's name was read out was Jeremy Clarkson, the television personality and farmer who had helped found the Hawkstone Farmers Choir in 2024. That detail immediately sent a large portion of the internet down a separate path, generating claims and theories about orchestrated voting and deliberate influence. But chasing that path leads away from the real answer, not toward it. The real answer requires understanding something fundamental about what Britain's Got Talent actually is, because the show presents itself as one thing while operating in the final as something structurally different. Throughout the auditions and semifinals, it presents itself as a national talent search, guided by professional judges whose entire purpose is to identify and protect exceptional performers. That promise is kept. When a judge presses a golden buzzer, it is the highest recognition the format offers, reserved for acts who will produce something the judges believe belongs on the biggest stage. The process works exactly as advertised through every stage of the competition, right up until the final. But the final is not the conclusion of that talent competition. It is an entirely separate contest that borrows the same stage, the same judges, and the same host of scenery, but runs on completely different logic. Every advantage built across months of performance, every judge endorsement, every golden buzzer, every viral clip that reached millions of people across multiple continents resets to zero the moment the voting lines open. The final is decided by which act can mobilize the most United Kingdom mobile phone numbers in a 2-hour window. Those are the actual mechanics of the contest Matty walked into, and once you understand them clearly, the result stops looking like an injustice and starts looking like an almost inevitable structural outcome. To understand why that matters, you need to understand who Matty Juniosa is and what he brought to the series. Matthew Juniosa was born in Mandaluyong City in Metro Manila and grew up in a household where music was central to daily life. He started performing as a young child, idolized Beyoncé so completely that he gave himself a nickname inspired by her, and absorbed the work of Aretha Franklin, Christina Aguilera, Stevie Wonder, and Tina Turner the way some people absorb language, letting it shape how he understood and processed the world. He was also, famously among his circle, the kind of devoted One Direction fan who would make his friends sit down and watch the band's original audition footage until they understood why it mattered. That specific detail became meaningful later in ways none of them could have anticipated at the time. Before Britain's Got Talent, there had been other attempts and other stages. He competed on the first season of Idol Philippines in 2019 and was eliminated before the finish. He formed a vocal group, released music, competed again on a nationally broadcast platform, and finished fourth. During that period, he was also on the receiving end of comments about his weight and appearance, and was told repeatedly by people in positions to shape careers that he had the talent, but lacked the kind of relatability that mainstream audiences respond to. That specific category of dismissal, where someone acknowledges your ability and then tells your problem is simply who you are, tends to settle into a person in a way that ordinary failure does not. He carried that for years. By 2022, he had moved to Glasgow on a partial scholarship to study musical theatre at the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland, working part-time as a waiter, while steadily building a stage career through productions in Glasgow and Edinburgh. He was doing the work, quietly and consistently, in a country that had not yet heard of him. Britain's Got Talent producers reportedly approached him 3 separate times before he agreed to audition. And when he finally said yes, he walked in with a level of preparation that most contestants simply do not bring to that room. He had researched Simon Cowell directly. He identified that Purple Rain by Prince was among Cowell's most deeply loved songs and chose as his audition piece not because it was the safest or most comfortable performance choice for him, but because he had taken the time to understand the specific person sitting behind that table and had selected the song most likely to reach him. Before the music even started, Cowell asked whether he watched Star Wars. Matty replied, without a pause or a trace of nerves, that he was too gay for that. The theater erupted. Cowell, who has spent decades on television becoming the person in the room, who cannot be caught off guard, looked genuinely surprised. The energy in the room shifted completely in those seconds before a single note had been played. That kind of composure under that specific pressure is not something most people can manufacture. He delivered it as though it required nothing. The performance matched everything that came before it. Every note was deliberate and controlled. The judges were standing before the song had finished. The audience was chanting for the golden buzzer before any judge had completed their remarks, and Cowell pressed it. But the part of that moment that tends to get consumed by the celebration is what Matty said before he sang. He told the panel on camera that he had spent years believing he would always be a singing competition loser. He named that fear out loud in one of the most watched television formats in the country, and then walked to the center of the stage and spent the next several minutes dismantling it in front of millions of people. The audition clip went viral across multiple countries within hours. Diaspora communities across several continents amplified it simultaneously. He had become something considerably larger than a contestant on a Saturday night television program, and the most significant moment of his time on the show had not yet happened. That moment came in Semi-Final 1, which aired on April 25th from the Even Apollo. The act most widely expected to win the public vote that night was a dog dancing duo, Anastasia and Salsa, and that expectation proved accurate. Matty closed the show with a cover of Dream On by Aerosmith that earned a standing ovation from the judges and the audience. The praise was unambiguous. And then Amanda Holden, at the very last moment, and despite audible crowd chanting for other acts, pressed her live golden buzzer, making Matty only the 4th act in the entire history of Britain's Got Talent to receive 2 golden buzzers in a single series. But what deserved more attention than it received in the celebration that followed was why she did it. Amanda revealed she had asked producers what would happen to the golden buzzer if she did not press it, and was told it would pass to the audience. She pressed it because she knew the public would likely back the dog act. A judge on the panel had looked at the situation clearly and concluded that the most talented performer in the semi-final would not win a public vote, and had done the only thing within her power to address that. The golden buzzer was not purely an expression of admiration. It was also an intervention. And what no one on that panel could have fully anticipated was that the same problem would return in the final at a scale no buzzer could touch. The final came down to the structural realities of who each act's most passionate supporters actually were and where they lived. Matty's support was genuinely global. Filipino entertainment networks had been following his journey since March. Communities across Southeast Asia, the United States, Canada, Australia, and the Middle East had been watching with real investment and posting about him constantly across every major platform. The global attention around him on the night of the final was substantial, visible, and real. Every single person in that global audience, regardless of how intensely they wanted to vote and how many times they would have voted, was locked out of the process by a system that accepts only United Kingdom mobile phone numbers. That is not a conspiracy or a deliberate act of exclusion. It is a design reality built at a time when the concept of a BGT Act, whose most engaged supporters were distributed across multiple continents, simply had not been a problem anyone needed to solve. It was not built to be unfair. It was just not built for Matty. Meanwhile, the Hawkstone Farmers Choir brought 34 members, each connected to networks of family, neighbors, farming communities, and agricultural organizations rooted entirely within the United Kingdom. Their story was not primarily a musical one. The choir had been created specifically to address the mental health crisis running through British farming communities, and that mission connected with a significant and emotionally engaged portion of the British public in a way that vocal performance alone cannot generate. Behind all of that was Jeremy Clarkson, whose television series had built one of the most loyal and active viewer communities in recent British broadcasting. His visible presence in the audience, emotional as the results were announced, did not need to come with any explicit instruction. It was a signal to a specific, numerically substantial segment of the British public who were already watching, and that segment responded to it. Matty did not lose because he was outperformed. He lost because the contest he was competing in during the final had different requirements from the contest he had been winning all series, and the advantages that mattered most in those 2 hours had been assembled long before the broadcast went live. For judges had told him, with a level of consensus that rarely surfaces on that panel, that his final performance could not have been done any better. Simon Cowell said he genuinely did not know how it could have been improved. Amanda Holden called it perfection. KSI told him he was about to go viral again. And Alicia Dixon, in what became the most telling remark of the evening, looked at him and said she was glad the judges were not the ones voting, because after that performance, he could also win the whole show. She delivered it as a compliment, but she was simultaneously signaling, to anyone paying close attention, that she already understood what the public vote was likely to produce. The answer had actually arrived a full month before any of that, on April 30th, when the official Andrew Lloyd Webber website published a complete cast announcement for the West End revival of Jesus Christ Superstar at the London Palladium, running from June 20th through to September 5th, with a press night on July 7th. The production was built around Sam Ryder in the lead role, listed clearly in that cast announcement, a month before the BGT final had even aired, was Matty J from Britain's Got Talent in the role of Anna's. The professional theater industry had already made its judgment before the public phone lines opened. While Britain was still deciding whether he would finish first or fourth on a Saturday evening, the West End had already committed money, resources, and a contracted role to him based on a professional assessment of his ability to perform 8 times a week in front of a paying audience across a multi-month run. That distinction is the real story. The BGT final is a 2-hour emotional exercise shaped by community loyalty, personal feeling, and the specific energy a viewer brings to their phone on a particular Saturday night. A West End casting is directors, producers, and musical supervisors staking genuine financial resources on a professional judgment about whether someone could sustain that level of performance over months. They are not voting on a feeling. They were investing in a conclusion they had already reached independently. After the result was announced, Matty posted on Instagram that he had placed fourth on Britain's Got Talent, which happened to fall on Beyoncé's birthday, and that he was very proud of it. He said the whole experience had given him exactly the energy and determination he needed to go after the Jesus Christ Superstar role. He mentioned keeping a handful of golden confetti from his first golden buzzer, because he sometimes needed it to remind himself the whole thing had genuinely been real. That detail alone says more about this story than any placing in any vote. A person still marveling at the journey while already holding a West End contract is not defined by a 4th-place finish on a phone poll. The trophy went to someone else. The career was already built in waiting, decided by people whose business it is to know the difference.